Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. I'm here to give my reaction review to Dark Shadows episode 115, and then I'm going to do 116. So, this episode, you get a location shot. Again, you're not going to get many more of these of the old house. And yeah, we do start at Collinwood too, but the focus is here the old house because that's where Matthew Morgan is hiding. And for those who are wondering where he's hiding in the old house, if you have not seen the prior episodes, he's hiding behind the bookcase, the secret bookcase. It's an entrance behind it, and there's a little, very small room, almost like it would be a closet, like a closet almost. So, but there's a bed in there and all that. So David is finally bringing Matthew his food. You saw in the prior episode that David was gathering food. In prior episodes, David was gathering food for Matthew. David is delivering that food to Matthew Morgan, who's in the old house now. And they have this conversation. Matthew, says before he leaves, he'll tell David the biggest secret of this house. David says the ghost, but Matthew says even you don't know it. And David insists on knowing it, but Matthew says, I'll tell you before I leave. And he goes, you don't have to leave. You could stay here forever. David, this episode, though, it does, touch upon Victoria Winters going on vacation. This episode is primarily about David and Matthew, really, and what their relationship is. In all honesty, you know, I know a lot of folks might say, well, Dark Shadows was solely focused on Victoria Winters. And I would say that's sort of a miscalculation here. Again, she's not the only character they're focused on, because if that were the case, you wouldn't have development like this. And what I mean by that is, up until this point, think of what David has been in the series so far. He's kind of been a problem child to his father, to Victoria, and he tried to kill his own dad. And again, to play devil's advocate, okay, his dad wanted to send him away, and it still does, by the way. To Roger, the best solution is to send David away, because to make a long story short, Roger does not want to be a responsible father. I mean, that's what this is. And David fears a lot of things. That's why he's sort of susceptible to, outburst or violent behavior, or even doing an action that is sort of just out there. He's scared of being sent away. He's scared his father will convince his Aunt Liz to send him away, but Elizabeth has assured him that will not happen as long as he listens and befriends Victoria Winters. Basically, works with her, and he does here. He is sort of work working that in a lot of ways. Um, but Victoria has had her own experiences, obviously, up to this point, including with David, as you well know. I think the best way I would describe David in this episode is this a turning point for the character? I would say it's not a complete turning point at all. It's more leaning toward, he's going to have to make a decision, a part of sort of growing up in a way. He's a very scared little boy. He's a very scared kid. This is not, in all fairness, this is where David is not Michael Myers. David is talking to his Aunt Elizabeth and at Collinwood when he returns from the old house with Matthew. There's a very interesting conversation there, because Liz tells him, loyalty is important. If you have a friend, they're loyal to you, and the person who you should be loyal to is your father most of all. Um, And David is kind of like, yeah, well, he's not necessarily always loyal to me. Well, you both should. It's a very interesting conversation. And that's what I'll say is that this is leaning toward David making the decision to telling about what he saw, what he's eventually going to see. Because this is also the episode where Matthew Morgan kidnaps Victoria Winters. Um, when David is at the old house, Victoria, before she leaves for her vacation to Bangor, who the hell, by the way, vacations in Bangor, man? There are a lot of other. I get you like Frank Gardner. Go to a beach, any beach on the East Coast. It's fine. But no, she's going to vacation in Bangor, Maine, which is only 50 miles. I mean, it's sort of before the kidnapping, when I first watched this episode, I said, okay, are the writers actually going to finally revisit Victoria's past? Because it led with that sort of monologue opening that Vicky is still searching for her past. Okay, you kind of haven't done it in a couple episodes. So are we going back to that? No, we're not, because we're gonna have Matthew kidnap her, which makes sense for what's coming. And I love that they do this because it puts Vicky in, once again, grave danger. So once she goes and gets David, she drops her wallet. She literally drops her wallet. Vicky does at the old house by accident, picking up a loaf of bread, and they leave the old house. That it's crazy because both of them stare at the wallet and none of them pick it up, which is funny. Um, they leave. Vicky thought when they get back to Collinwood, Victoria realizes she lost her wallet. Elizabeth says, "Well, I can give you some money if you can't find it. It's fine." She goes, "No, I know I must have dropped it somewhere either between the old house or there. I'll find it." So Vicky has not left for her vacation. She goes back to the old house. Um, and who's holding her wallet? Who's got her? Who's? It's Matthew Morgan. Matthew picks up the wallet and shows it to Vicky. You're in trouble now, girl. And this Matthew is going to kidnap Victoria Winters. Vicky does not leave for vacation. This is the vacation to hell. This is the vacation from hell, if you will. What do I like most about this episode? Don't get me wrong, I love Alexander. David Hennessy in this episode is phenomenal. The car because you can tell they're developing his character a bit further with with some of the little conversations that he has with other characters, especially Elizabeth. So you kind of have to pay attention to what's being said to him, and not just necessarily what's being said to him, but is what's being said registering in his young mind, and what is his decision? Because ultimately, David now what David really doesn't want is sent away or punished in any way where, okay, you're going to send me away. You're going to send me to jail. I don't want that. He wants to be a normal kid. So they're sort of trying to kind of make that turn with David. And this conversation is kind of, we're not there yet, but we're going to get there. Now, is David ever really a normal kid? Not by television standards, no. This is not a 90s sitcom. This is not a sitcom. Dark Shadows is not a sitcom, though it has elements of comedy at times. There are funny moments in it that are hilarious, but it's not a sitcom. It's a gothic soap opera. This is also not a fairy tale. So, that being said, um, yeah, this episode was written by Michael Marmorstein, or sorry, I'm going to freaking butcher names here. Malcolm Marmorstein, sorry, directed by John Sedgwick. This episode was recorded November 28th, 1966. It was broadcast December 2nd, 1966. So there you go. Again, you're not gonna get much more location shots in Dark Shadows. A lot of it's gonna be sets, which is fine. It's been sets for a long time, forever, since the show started. I also, though we don't have other characters in this episode, I like who we do get, because though what I mean by that more specifically, Roger himself is somebody who, how do I put this? How do I make sure that, you know, Roger, though not in this episode, is ever present in this episode in a weird way because of the conversation with Liz and David. And I like that. This is what I mean by getting a character across even though they're not in that specific episode. And they've Dark Shadows has done this since the beginning. This is going to be a tried and true formula of DS. For all the mention of Ghost, for all the mention of the supernatural in the beginning, though those are characters too that you don't necessarily see, you have to get across. So it's, again, this has always been a formula of DS. So hope you guys enjoyed the review. I'll see you later.